Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amesh Manzakani.
I'm John Gruszczak.
And we're here from the Office 365 ProPlus team. And over the next 75 minutes, we're really going to talk to you about what it takes to deploy Office 365 ProPlus using System Center Configuration Manager. So we want to make sure that you understand the different capabilities that we have built into the product today. For those of you who have started the journey early with us several years ago, you should have seen us starting with the update management portion of Configuration Manager, then moving on to other and more capabilities that we've been adding over time. So that's kind of what we want to be able to talk to you today regarding and saying, hey, what are the different components? How do I manage things like initial deployment, second installs, update management, and so on? So we'll kind of talk through all of that, and that's what you should be able to get out of this session today. So that being said, I want to first make sure that we kind of level set on what is this Office 365 ProPlus. What are we actually talking about here, right? First, Office 365 ProPlus is our latest suite and features within the Office application. So again, we're talking about Word, PowerPoint, Excel. We have about 10 applications in total in the overall product. The big key difference here that you're going to see is between our perpetual product, which is Office Professional Plus 2016, which is based on our MSI technology, and Office 365 Pro Plus, which is based on the click-to-run technology. The key difference is with our MSI product, we took a snapshot of right where we were with all the features and capabilities. And that's kind of what you're seeing on the top line here, right? Those top set of boxes around collaboration, mobility, intelligence, and trust. We started delivering these capabilities. And what we've done differently with ProPlus is we started providing additional capabilities throughout the months after we released that particular version of the perpetual product. And we're doing that in our subscription product. Now, what does that really mean, and why is that important to you and your users? The critical thing here is if you kept in mind how we delivered our servers as well as our client, every time we released a major version of the server, we needed a client equivalent that actually took advantage of those capabilities. So if it was Exchange 2010, we had Outlook 2010 as well as all the rest of the Office suites that took advantage of the individual capabilities. Now, for those of you who are moving to the cloud for the back-end services, Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, or even Skype for Business Online, you'll notice that we're also releasing those capabilities over a period of time. And so therefore, we need a client that is going to be able to keep up and take those capabilities and use it. Now, for those of you who are still using on-premise servers, we understand that that might not be a big deal for you. But the other thing that we are that we can do really quickly is we can address a lot of security concerns that we're seeing out in today's world, right? We're able to deliver new features over time and really help reduce that overall security threat within your environment, even if you're not taking advantage of the cloud services. So as you can see that we have here, initially we had DLP capabilities, but over time we introduced things like the Advanced Threat Protection Safe Links, where if I clicked on a particular link within Word, or in Outlook, I was able to go validate whether it is part of our reputation services or not, and then be able to take you to that location instead of taking you to a potential location that would be unsafe for your organization and download a potential malware. So those are kind of things that we're constantly talking to customers, working with our security teams at Microsoft, and really determining where can we actually keep you guys safe, and how do we do that? And over time, you're going to continuously see better and better functionalities and capabilities across all of these 4 pillars that we're showing you here today. Now, at some point, we will release another version of Office, the perpetual product, but that is going to provide you with majority of these capabilities. So you have to decide which route you want to take. But the other critical thing that I want to make sure, why we're addressing this in our click-to-run product is because what we're hearing from our customers today, from all of you guys, is that, when you have these functionalities, these capabilities in the product, for example, back in the day we came out with OneDrive for Business, where you can store all your files in a central location and be able to retrieve them from almost any device that you wanted to. And so what we're seeing is, without providing these capabilities to your end users, these individual users or even business units are going out and they're actually purchasing their own solutions. Because at the end of the day, they want to be able to take advantage of these new capabilities that they're seeing out there, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that you have full control as to what your users are able to get. Because as they start going and purchasing new solutions, now it typically becomes in the confines of IT to maintain it, to ensure application compatibility and so on. So it becomes a lot more difficult to manage what is in your environment. And therefore, by building a lot of those capabilities in Office 365 Pro Plus, you can certainly deliver those as we have them ready and roll them out to your organization. So those are kind of the critical areas as to why Click to Run is the right choice. But everybody keeps asking, what's the difference? What's really the difference between the two? Well, we talked about the features, right? The applications are all the same, but the features and capabilities within the two different products are certainly going to be different. In addition to that, from an administration perspective, we have a couple of different things. With your subscription product, you have the ability to install onto 5 devices, 5 PCs, 5 tablets, and 5 mobile devices, right? In addition to that, you get a lot more connections allowed. We typically say about 20 connections on top of that to a VDI or shared desktop environment. Now, if you want to know more about that, we have a couple of sessions. I think one already occurred, but the other one you can certainly check out. If not, you can go back to the Ignite website. We'll have a recording for that talking about what is the best way to deal with your virtualized environment using ProPlus. So that's kind of one of the benefits. Whereas the other point is if you're using our perpetual product, it's per device. And so that one device would be particularly licensed, but you won't get advantage of being able to take that one license across multiple devices. And even when you do, we're able to personalize and give you things like your roaming files as you jump from device to device. So it gives you quite a bit of advantage of, as you move from one device to another, I can quickly pick up a file and then be able to continue to work and either create or collaborate directly from there. The other things that we look at, is our overall update mechanism. How are we actually doing our deployment and servicing of the product? With Click to Run, every month we deliver a new build, and we actually compile the entire thing. So you're always one update away from being current. And that is a critical thing, because if you think about how you've always deployed MSI, what did that look like? You deployed the base image, right? We released the last MSI version in, I believe, September of 2015. So between now and then, you would deploy a base image, and then you would continuously update and update and update until you get current. So that could at least take you a good amount of time, maybe 30 minutes, maybe 45, maybe about an hour. It's a significant amount of work that you'd have to do there. You could certainly daisy chain it. You're going to have maybe several reboots and so on. But with Click to Run, you're just one update away from becoming current if you were going that route. If you're just installing it brand new, then you're already current, because we build all of our patches, all of the cumulative fixes directly into that build. So once you're installing it, you're definitely right there. So, but let's talk about servicing for a little bit. As you do decide to deploy Office 365 Pro Plus, we have several servicing options. We certainly have the ability to do what we call servicing on the monthly channel, where as we are deploying our quality builds, we're deploying those every between 30 to 45 days. So you could certainly get those updates, stay current, and you'll be good. But we know that many organizations don't like that much change month after month. So that's why we introduced our semi-annual channels. And what that provides you is the ability to jump on a build or a release that's going to stay for 18 months long. So you're not introducing change. And we understand the fact that if you're truly using Office as a productivity tool, and only a productivity tool, you want the latest and greatest features. I know all the applications I have on my phone, I'm constantly eager to see what developers are going to provide me. And they're constantly providing new features that are exciting to me. But when you start talking about Office as a platform, where you have critical line of business applications on top of that, macros, that's a different story. You want to make sure that those things that are generating IP for your organization are stable, are able to continuously work. Now, we have a lot of great sessions throughout this week that really talk about how to deal with application compatibility, right? We have a new toolkit that we just released that will actually evaluate what you have in your environment. In fact, I'll even show you as part of our demo today how I can look at all the config manager devices and really get a detailed description of all the add-ins within my organization. And we're starting to add all those capabilities in multiple different places depending on how you are managing ProPlus. So we want to be able to show you that. So that's why we came out with these two particular set of channels, where you have your monthly, where you're continuously updating and updating. And I know, at least for somebody like me, I don't have any critical add-ins. I don't have any particular macros that I'm using on a daily basis. And therefore, that is the channel that I am well suited for. But for those of you who have your finance departments who are using macros, or if you have departments that are constantly doing tradings and really critical calculations, we want to provide you with that semi-annual channel so you have that assurance and stability for that longer period of time. So now let's talk about the different kind of flows in the overall development lifecycle, right? What does that really look like? We know that to actually get the bits onto your box takes a good amount of work, right? And as you can see on the screen here, we have 7 critical steps in what we call the first install. This is either I'm coming from a legacy version of Office, or I'm installing a brand new version of Office on a clean box. It's just my OS, a couple of other applications possibly on that box as well. And so for that, we would have to set up things like your identity, making sure all your users are set up in Azure Active Directory or our Office 365 Admin Center. And then from there, we want to configure your package. And we'll show you how we've integrated and built that directly into Configuration Manager. After that, we want to start downloading and validating against those critical add-ins and macros. And then, of course, your environment itself. One thing, and then beyond that, we want to be able to make sure we distribute those files to your closest to your endpoints, right? There's a lot of situations where, we can certainly create installs directly from the CDN, which for those of you in high bandwidth areas, fantastic. We can certainly do that. But for those of you who have sites that certainly have low bandwidth, we have other solutions to be able to replicate those files all the way to that closest endpoint, and then be able to deliver the install directly from there. Finally, after you install, we go ahead and do the activation process, and those are your 7 steps to get the bits on the box. What you'll see below is something called a second install. And the way we classify that today is we want to be able to say, okay, if we have a base image where we're only saying Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook is what everybody in the organization will get. And then later on, I want to advertise through the portal, Visio, Project, maybe Access, for those who really need those applications. That's kind of where we classify our second install. You have the initial bits of ProPlus on the box, but we want to have a delta set of bits coming down so we can light up those extra applications. Another good case for this is language packs, or what we now call language accessory packs in ProPlus, where we're saying I have maybe English as my base language. Now I want to add French, German, and Spanish onto that. So as an end user, I can, again, go to the portal or the software center, be able to download those additional set of applications, and then be able to apply those on my box. Or for those of you who provide admin rights on your individual desktops, we have an external website, a publicly facing website, that you can also download and acquire those language accessory packs. And then finally, there's the update management. This is part of the servicing of the client. And as we mentioned, right, there's two ways of kind of doing it, right? We have the ability to stay in a semi-annual channel, which we're still getting monthly updates, but the key difference is you're not getting features, you're getting stability fixes, you're getting security fixes into those. So those are always critical. We will never compromise on the security of the product, so every time we have detected something that needs to be fixed from a security standpoint, we certainly issue that on a timely basis so we can apply that onto the box. And you can see here, this is a much smaller set of steps. And with ProPlus, we want to be able to keep you into this journey where you deploy once and you're continuously updating in much smaller chunks. Because let's face it, with the MSI technology, you would deploy every 5 to 7 years, right? The typical story I always tell everybody is if we came out with a feature idea, traditionally, what would we do? I would take that feature idea back, or one of my colleagues would. We would sit in our Redmond offices, we'd wallow about the feature, and we would kind of, build a prototype. We would put it into our beta once we're ready to go, and then we would start, testing it with our customers, whether you're part of the TAP or you go through an RDP. And then finally, 3 years later, we'd release the functionality along with that version of Office. Okay? So now that feature is a little over about 3 years old at this point. But the reality is we all know you won't even look at the product until SP1, at a minimum. So there goes another year and a half, 2 years, right, before you actually do it. So that feature now is anywhere between 5 to 7 years old. And we know your end users want to be as productive and as quickly as possible because they're seeing other functionalities and other users being able to grab these features. So that's where this product really shines, is the fact that we can provide those capabilities in a much faster way. A lot of the stuff that we've actually delivered on that bottom row that I showed you earlier were ideas that, that we've been thinking about for a while and that we've been really perfecting and then finally delivered. And some were ideas that were recently generated. So we're able to take those ideas and really deliver them out to our customers in a much faster way. So that's the overall life cycle. But as you're thinking through how you want to actually manage all of this, there's kind of this framework that we've put together on what it really looks like. One, we say, okay, what is the action that I want to do? Am I going to do a first install? Or am I going to do a second install or an actual update? And what we're seeing is the reason we've broken this framework out in this particular manner is we see a lot of organizations saying, you know what, we're going to use Configuration Manager to do our first install, make sure we get the devices on the box because you are working with larger package sizes. You do want to potentially use a task sequencer to uninstall the old product, and then you want to be able to install the new product. So we totally get that. And then, but from an update management perspective, you have multiple different choices. For those of you who are in a good bandwidth situation, scenario, you can certainly have those devices directly take the updates and services from our CDN, while other devices that you want to have more control over, you can certainly use things like your automatic deployment rules, the ADRs, and be able to distribute that out via Configuration Manager. So that's why we have these multiple choices and multiple areas and capabilities, and that's how we broke this out. And of course, you can use the Office deployment tool, and that's what you traditionally had to do. But with all the work that we've done with the Configuration Manager team, we're able to take a majority of those capabilities that you had to use with ODT and now built it seamlessly into Configuration Manager. So John's going to walk you through those kind of steps, and then I'm going to come back on stage and give you a demo. And again, we talked about the last areas. Where are we getting these bits from? Are we doing it directly from a local source, my distribution point at the site, or am I going to get it from a cloud install? So I'm going to pass it on to John, who's going to talk to you more about the details, and we'll go straight to demo shortly after.
Thank you, Ramesh. Let's dive into deployment. So for those of you that have followed along our journey of ProPlus and Configuration Manager, have noticed a lot of fantastic innovations and integrations lately between the two and really tying together that better together story. We kind of focus on 3 areas: deployment, updates, and then your actionable insights of reporting. Starting with deployment, it's about giving you as IT pros and admins that flexibility and control to deploy Office on your terms, meeting your business requirements and justification needs. When we take a look at updates, it's about that integration into the software update workflows and to your existing or new automatic deployment rules, so you have that same familiar experience the way that you would update Office previously using Configuration Manager. And lastly, around the actionable insights reporting, I can't tell you how many customers of mine that I met with that were always asking for more insights, how to better control their Office 365 ProPlus deployments. So Mesh is going to demo some of those reports that we have available that really give you a deep dive look into what your deployment looks like. So let's take a look at what the centralized management dashboard or the Office 365 client management dashboard looks like. So you'll see here, you're hit kind of right away with some basic statistics into what your Office 365 deployment looks like. You'll see here you get a client count, versions that are out there, and also the languages that are installed out there. If we move along here onto the right-hand side, you'll see you're actually going to get into some of your deployment and actionable items here. So this is where you're going to see the Office 365 client install wizard, which I'll talk about on the next slide. Underneath it, you're able to create the automatic deployment rules and also create custom client settings. You're able to access some of those reports that we talked about. And then lastly, you're able to manage your updates from here as well. So this is kind of your centralized hub. It's its own node within the software library. So it's your own kind of control command center for Office 365 ProPlus. Let's talk about that Office 365 client install wizard. And I'm really excited about this. It was released as part of Config Manager 1702. And what it really did is replace the need for all those manual processes that Amesh was kind of referencing to that you used to have to do with the Office deployment tool. Gone are the days that you have to worry about creating 15 XMLs by hand, having to go back and troubleshoot, wondering if you left just a simple character or a space out. Gone are the days that you have to go out and manually download the source files by hand through command lines. And what you'll see here is you're actually able to go through that same kind of logic flow as when you were creating your XMLs. So you start with specifying what Office 365 ProPlus or Office product that you'd want to use. Underneath it, you're able to set any type of application exclusions that you'd want for that specific business group that's receiving the package. So maybe your sales or marketing department doesn't necessarily need Access or Publisher. So you can go ahead and uncheck those boxes, and it would make sure that that install doesn't include those 2 applications. Another cool part is that you're actually able to check Project and Visio here as well. And not only are you able to include Project or Visio, but you can specify what type of license type these are going to be using. So are they the Office 365 online versions, or perhaps they're the click-to-run versions that still use perpetual licensing that we introduced around a year ago. From here, you can also go ahead and configure the additional languages. And again, these packages can be created for specific business groups, as Amesh will go ahead and demo. And the other fantastic part is when you're building or actually creating and deploying ProPlus through the Office deployment tool and configuration XML, you have to make sure that you specify the Office COM object set to true so that Config Manager can actually manage the client devices. When you use the Office 365 Client Installer Wizard, it sets it automatically for you. Let's take a look at what the enterprise managed deployment process looks like using Configuration Manager. So at the start, you're going to go ahead and get the Office deployment tool, which is included in the Client First Install Wizard. You're going to get your source files that you need for the from the Office CDN. Then you're going to go ahead and build out your Configuration Manager package. So this is going to include the Office deployment tool, your source installation files, and then your configuration XML file. Then you're going to go ahead and wrap these all up, push that package out to the distribution point, and then from either a pull or push distribution method, your clients out there are going to go ahead and communicate with the distribution points and start pulling down the installation. And the really great part is if you think back just a minute on that first installer wizard that we were talking about, now this whole process is now baked natively into Configuration Manager. So previously with ConfigMan 2012 R2, or if you're using a third-party distribution tool, These first two steps you would have to go and do manually through command lines, going to the actual download center and downloading the Office deployment tool, running a command line and the ODT in the downloader mode to pull down your source files. Now this is all baked natively into Configuration Manager, and you don't even have to leave the application. Let's talk about servicing Office. So we've talked about how to get it on the machine. Now let's talk about how to service Office and including the integration that's around into the software update workflow and the automatic deployment rules. So I'm sure many of you out there have seen this slide. These are the channels as previous, so you've seen a lot of our best practices around this, and I will get to kind of the name or the channel changes on the next slide here. This is what probably a lot of you have been familiar with over the past year or two. We talk about our deferred channel and first release for deferred channel, which were released every 4 months. The difference, both supported builds, the difference being FRDC, or first release for deferred channel, actually propagates into deferred channel. So what it allows you to do is go ahead and push this out to your business groups that are your QA or your validation groups, so they can go ahead and make sure that they've tested this out. As a mesh reference, you might have a finance department that's very macro or add-in heavy. You have business users testing this and validating, so when that deferred channel actually rolls out to your general population, maybe your 95%, you already validated everything and mitigated risk as much as possible. Of course, we still have our monthly channel, and you'll see these numbers we have up here of the 90, 10, and 1%. These are very general guidelines in what we are trying to advise customers, and we're kind of moving away from these a little bit, but we still want to make sure that you're keeping a good mind on how to use first release for deferred channel, or what will be semi-annual targeted, which we'll cover on the next slide here. We had the announcement that Office update model is aligning to Windows, so we have this semi-annual release, which will be released 2 times per year, every July and January. It's based on the prior targeted release, so that same kind of update model that you saw with FRDC, propagating up into DC. You have that same familiar experience. The little bit difference is, again, it's only 2 times per year, and you also get a longer support window. So with deferred channel, you're only able to kind of defer to 8 months, and then you would have to take the next update. With the semi-annual release, you can actually get up to 14 months. The targeted channel, we still want to use the same way that we use first release for deferred channel, so we want to make sure that you're propagating this out to your various business groups, and you want to have representation from all business groups. So one thing we've seen organizations do is they might push out, which was FRDC, or now the semi-annual targeted. They would only push it out to maybe their IT pro users or in their IT audience. And we want to make sure that you're propagating it out to get full business group validation. So maybe your R&D department, your finance departments, or accounting. Those heavy users that typically come back and push back and have the most issues, you want to make sure you have a wide range of support there. So they're helping validate these builds. So when it does get to your production and your mass, that you've already validated and, again, mitigated risk. And of course, we still have our monthly channel, and we don't want to leave that one out. On the previous slide, you saw that we generally recommend that only 1% of population is on this, and there's a reason for that, because Amesh talked about kind of the bandwidth situation. We absolutely have customers that are large organizations that are fully on the monthly channel, so they're able to consume and they want these features now, and if that's what works for you and your business requirements and justifications, that's fantastic. What most customers do with their large kind of R&D departments, finance departments, et cetera, they want to make sure that they have this business validation process in place. So that's where you'd kind of pair your semi-annual and then your targeted channel together. And you could still have perhaps a small subset of your IT users, maybe your business admins or kind of your champions of the group on this monthly channel, so they're able to get the latest feature releases. They can create that adoption and change management communication, work with your help desk so users understand how to use these new features. And that's how the 3 kind of align together. Let's take a look at the update scenario. So updating from Config Manager. The first thing that's going to happen is Amesh and his team are going to go ahead and publish the update to the Office CDN. Configuration Manager is going to identify that there's update available, and then you're going to go ahead and use that software update management workflow to download the update. You'll go ahead and push it out to the distribution points, and then depending on what configuration settings you have set for updates, the clients are going to start communicating with the configuration manager, communicate out to the distribution points, and start pulling those down. And again, the great part is now this is all baked natively into Configuration Manager. So no longer do you have to go out there and manually run the Office deployment tool in the configuration mode, download those updates, then get into Config Manager and package it all up. You're now only using that one tool of Configuration Manager. Let's take a little bit deeper of a dive into the actual Configuration Manager update process and what's going on in the back end. You'll start here with the Office 365 Cloud and Office CDN. So Office will publish that Office 365 client update, the package through WSUS. Config Manager is then going to identify the applicable desktops that will receive this update, and will pay in respect into any automatic deployment rules that you have. Config Man will refer to the Office CDN file list and distribute the required files. So it's first going to request the update. It's going to receive it. And then we'll go into the final step. So Config Manager is going to form those desktops that are valid and valid to accept the update. And it's going to kick off that point where they go into the distribution point and they start pulling it down. You'll see the update gets requested, received, published, and it's all natively baked into Config Man. Let's take a look at what that WSUS package contents and naming looks like. So it contains a package, this noop.exe, that's required by WSUS, but it's without its code. And what it really is that metadata instruction that Config Manager needs in order to complete its work and get that update process kicked off. So when Amesh does his demo, you'll be able to take a look at some of that supersedence information that you've seen with other updates, dating back to prior versions of Office, Windows. But the big thing to kind of focus on here is these eligibility rules. So briefly, I talked about that Office COM object that needs to be enabled so Config Manager is able to communicate with the client device and kick off that processes that it needs. You must be in the correct package channel. So if you're trying to push the wrong channel to if you're trying to push perhaps a targeted to a semi-annual, you need to make sure those are in alignment. The other part, which seems kind of common knowledge here, is you must have the lower version you must have a lower number package version than what's out there. So Office will always look for that newer version out there. When it finds a number that's higher, then it will kick off that update. Lastly, you must have the matching bitness or architecture versions, so 32-bit for 32-bit and 64-bit for 64-bit. You'll see here the kind of the layout for the validation channels here, and just keep in mind, again, these first release for deferred channel, current channel, and deferred channel are all changing, but it just gives you an idea of what it looks like when you go into that software update workflow. These are what you're going to identify with. And the cool part is around a year and a half or 2 years ago, we announced the kind of change format to the year, month. So when you see a new update get published to Config Manager and to the Office CDN, you can actually identify what build version it is. You can go and check our support.office.com page and see what features, functionalities, security updates, et cetera, are part of that version that was just released. So let's talk about automatic deployment rules, because these are something that are widely used within Config Manager for deploying updates and really helping automate that process to stay current. So servicing Office using your ADRs. Most people are familiar with leveraging ADRs to download and deploy your updates to specific device collections. And again, it's really going to help automate that process to keep updates current. You're able to constrain your search criteria to only include your supported channels. So for instance, if you're a customer that might only be using the monthly channel, you have the bandwidth to be able to do that. You can specify via your ADR to only pull down and automate that process for the monthly version. If you are a customer that is supporting all 3 channels perhaps, again, you can go ahead and specify through your ADRs to make sure that it's pulling down all 3 channels. We saw that you're able to create those ADRs from the Office 365 management node. You're able to do the familiar experience that you were with ADRs previously, so you can set kind of the schedule, the end user device requirements, all that good stuff. And what we really just wanted to do, as Amesh has mentioned, is deliver that same kind of familiar experience that you were comfortable with previous versions of the Office and the MSI, and you're now getting that same deployment and update experience. Instead, you're getting the features much faster, though. So it's an all-around, much more positive, integrated, innovative experience. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Amesh, who's going to talk a little bit about Office reporting, and then he'll get into do some pretty fun demos here.
Thanks, John. Okay, from the reporting side, we have a number of reports that we have available on our GitHub site. So for those of you who haven't been there, it's http aka.ms/office scripts, and that will take you directly to our GitHub page, or you can use the link below to go to deep link directly to that section, where we have a number of reports that we've generated, so you can go and get a good inventory of what your organization looks like for ProPlus. As you can see here, we have things like devices with shared activation. For those of you who are doing either VDI or shared computer activation, we could certainly provide a list of those devices, as well as number of devices of count and so on. And we provide some with some nice little graphics, so you can either print those out or have those available for your business decision makers and your IT managers to be able to see the overall progress and kind of the diversity of devices that you have in your organization. Versus we have other set of reports that really give you the really nice, line by line detail of exactly what is there. So we focus things on products, again, where you're updating from, and so on. So I'll kind of show you what that looks like within the demo here. So let's kind of switch over to my environment, and we'll show you exactly what this looks like. Great. So this is an environment that we'd created in the lab itself, so it's just a basic VM. But as you can see, this is, in this particular version, the Office Client Management Dashboard that John was mentioning earlier. I have a good amount. I can look at by different types of collections, or I can go ahead and see the basic dashboard, which tells me the total number of clients that are available to me that are actually being managed by ConfigMan, and as well as a diversity of versions that I currently have within the environment. And finally, down here we have the client languages. This is especially important when you're trying to figure out how many languages you have, and we'll kind of show you why you need that as you're thinking about how you're going to service every single one of your clients around your organization. And then finally, we have the channels. So we talk about the different channels that we have available. We're certainly in the midst of updating the names, so we're going to start converging. You're going to see all these being updated over time. And then finally, we have the automatic deployment rules. So you can see I don't have that many devices here, but we can start populating a good amount of stuff throughout this whole thing. But when it comes to update management, we put a node down here called the Office 365 Updates that will automatically filter every single update that we are delivering through the Windows Update service. That will be available to you here, and we could certainly sort by which ones are superseded by the available icon, and then by the different names that we have available. And you could see here that as we have been updating our names, you're going to see some that that have the right names here. These are the older ones, and therefore you're not going to see it on that one. But any of the new ones that we start releasing will have the new names reflected in them. So let's kind of go back here and start talking about what the first install looks like. So if I click on the Office 365 installer, I get this wizard that allows me to go ahead and start entering some information. So I'm going to just call this ProPlus. I'm going to say it's going to go to the finance team. And then I'm going to find a basic location as to where I want to keep all my files in. So actually, let me just browse, find what I have on my local host. I'm going to go to CM packages, and I'm going to type in finance. That should, nope, that's not going to work. Let me go ahead and create the actual folder. I'm going to select that folder, and then I'm going to click next. Now, what I have available to me in this next screen is the ability to take any of your existing XML files, because ProPlus has certainly been out there for a bit. And this capability just came out in 1702, so we don't want you recreating every single one of those XML files. Instead, you can now consume that, and in the next several screens, we'll populate all that information there. The other thing I kind of want to show you here is, for those of you who hadn't seen the earlier demo, we have what we're going to be introducing is the new Office customization tool. It's going to be coming out in preview later this year, where you can actually create these in a UI format, where we can add additional sets of capabilities, such as my organization name. And then on top of that, we have a whole bunch of new application settings. So if you're familiar with the OCT for MSI, we're bringing a lot of those settings available, those preferences that you're setting during install time back, that allow you to customize ProPlus in the way that you're really normally used to with MSI. So you can certainly take this, you can take certainly, these files right here. What it's going to do, it's going to generate a file for you. Instead of writing it out in XML, we write it out in just basic text here. Tells you exactly, again, what version, what settings you want to have available. In fact, let me go ahead and, I'll type in Contoso or Costco. And then from here, I'm going to be typing in, I'll select ProPlus. I'm going to take Access OneDrive out. I'll add that, and then I'm going to select a couple of languages. We pull all the different languages here, and you'll kind of see the same capability in System Center Configuration Manager as well. But my point here is we're going to export this, and it will generate the XML file that you're used to. So if we went back into Configuration Manager, we can pull all that particular file right back in here to add that. So the reason I'm showing you this kind of two-step method is because those application settings will be available to you sooner than we'll be able to update Configuration Manager to also support those. So I don't have a timeline on that yet, but we'll certainly get that out as soon as we can, so you have that option. So at this point with this demonstration, we're going to go ahead and add the ability to, we're going to create a brand new one. Again, you're going to see that same familiarity between what I just showed you in the OCT for click to run to what we have over here. So I can look at ProPlus, I can look at business. It automatically, filters out the right set of applications that I'm going to have within my, within those two suites. We also have the ability to select none over here, and the reason we provided this is we got a number of requests from customers saying, hey, we just want to be able to publish Visio and Project to our software center and allow our users to be able to pull those, or you want to just target certain devices because you might have a limited amount of licenses available. So we wanted to have that capability there. The other thing I wanted to show you here is, let's go ahead and I'm going to uncheck Access. I'm going to take out the Groove client. But if I do select Visio or Project, what you're going to notice below is we have three different styles. We have your basic subscription product, and then we have 2 volume licensing products available to you. Now what this does is we know a lot of folks who have moved to Office 365 Pro Plus didn't actually purchase all the right set of subscriptions for Visio or Project, and therefore you probably purchased the perpetual version. So as long as you have the same version, which is 2013, what we've done is we've provided you a click-to-run equivalent of that perpetual product. So now you can host a perpetual version of Project or Visio, and Visio if you want both of them, and the subscription product of ProPlus all on one device. Now what this allows you to do is use your KMS or a Mac to activate those 2 products only. Now this is not available with Office 365 Pro Plus, but just only for Project Visio. So I want to make sure you guys are aware of that. So as we go ahead in this example, we're going to pick this. I'm going to go to the next screen. It's going to ask me kind of basic questions such as, what is the bitness do I want? So 3264. What is the actual channel value? And we haven't updated this yet, but we will start updating, as I mentioned, all of these different capabilities and naming especially as we, in certain future releases. So I'm going to go ahead and pick my deferred, and we can also see that this list is dynamically populated based off the channel. And that's what we're doing. This service here is actually going out to our Office service and actually looking all this information up. So as we continue to release newer and newer builds of that particular release, we are populating that here. So when you go back into ConfigMan, you'll start looking and seeing those values available to us. Those values available in the product. Then finally, we can look at languages. There's a number of core languages. There are about 40 in total. And then beyond that, there's some partial and individual proofing tools that you can go ahead and have available and download. So we could pick some additional ones. I'm going to pick also a partial language. And we've put checks into the system here. So if I had only a partial that I added into these and did not have a core, you would get an error telling you that you would actually need a single core before you can move forward with this. And then I could select my default language. Now, the other thing that we are also going to be introducing that we have already introduced in the ODT that we haven't exposed in this, in this UI yet is the ability to match the OS language. So if I start looking at your, what language packs that you have on your OS, we're going to start matching those automatically. Now, that becomes a bit of a challenge as to how do I know which ones I need to actually download before I can actually distribute it. So we've come up with an alternative way of being able to do that. It was what we introduced called a fallback to CDN. So if you take your core set of bits and you download that, so basically what do you need to define to install a single version of ProPlus? You need your architecture defined, you need one language, and you need the actual product itself. So those are 3 attributes that you have to define to be able to install ProPlus. So we're going to pick ProPlus. We'll pick an architecture value, let's just say 64-bit, and then one language, which I'll default to ENUS, which is United States English. So as long as I have those 3 things, I can start taking that, which is about approximately a gigabyte worth of files that you're going to be downloading, and then you can distribute that to all of your DPs across the globe. Now, if I decided that I needed, let's say, 20 languages, that certainly starts adding up because you have to download every language pack on top of that, which is approximately 200 megs. So that, at that point, when you're about the 20 language range, you're hitting about 6 or 7 gigs. And that we know, as you go across the globe, it could certainly take a good amount of bandwidth and time to actually replicate all that information. So what we've introduced is the ability, 2 capabilities. One, I already mentioned the match OS. So I can say, hey, if I'm going to push this out to all of my users in Spain, I could look at that individual device, whether that person is a native Spanish speaker or not. I could look at their OS, pick all the languages that are available, and then fall back to just the alternate languages from the CDN and bring that down. So that's a new capability that we're going to be adding on later this year, and that should be lighting up across all of our different tool sets that we have available. So that's something that to think about as you're downloading and architecting how you're going to distribute your first set of bits. Beyond that, we have our property sets. So we have things like the EULA, where we actually provide you the supplemental EULA directly on the screen so you know what you're accepting. And what this will do, will accept it on behalf of the user. We know there was a bit of an issue for those who've used this capability that we were accepting the EULA in sessions as the SCCM agent, but not for your individual users. So we're working to solve for that. And then we have the auto activation, pin icons to taskbar. Again, this is only for Win 7 and 8, as mentioned on the screen here. And then also the ability to set up shared computer licensing for those devices that would actually need this. So once I have those things set, at this point, it's pretty much done, right? I've replicated what I have in the ODT without actually creating the XML file. But what we're doing in the background is we are generating that XML file. We're going out to the CDN, we're downloading the ODT, and we're going to go target the devices that you've defined in the next set of screens. So we're now at this point, we're leveraging all of the built-in capabilities that Configuration Manager actually has in here. So I can go ahead and either decide, and I get a full summary as to what I've configured, and then I can go back and start targeting, and maybe add it as a task sequencer, and so on. Now, the one capability that we haven't installed in here yet that I've heard a lot of customers ask for, which we have on our backlog, is to be able to automatically update these builds. So right now, as you defined, if you saw, we defined a version, which could have been the latest version or a slightly older version. But what we want to do, especially of those of you who have Visio and Project, and you are advertising those through your software center, we want to automatically update those as we are updating the other clients, so we're keeping in lockstep with that particular version. Otherwise, right now, you'd have to go back and recreate this package one more time to be able to do that, which we want to help reduce that overall management cost of making that happen. So I'm going to get out of this. And then we're going to go ahead and kind of switch over into the update management. So now let's say I have targeted all of those devices and upgraded them to ProPlus. Now there's a new version that comes out, or a new release, depending on how you want to set it up. And we want to go ahead and look for those. Oops, let me go back in my updates. Let's retrieve those. And as I mentioned, all of these are just filtered here. If you go through all of your updates here, you can see every single one that's available under software updates, or you can break it down between the Windows 10 servicing updates or just Office 365 Pro Plus. So I'm going to go ahead and sort by my icon. You can see now we have the new names populated here with the semi-annual channel. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this particular one. And as John had mentioned, what we're only downloading here is just the metadata information. I've had a lot of customers ask me, hey, can we actually get the same process through WSUS, right? And what we're doing here differently that WSUS doesn't totally work with is we're just downloading the metadata. Otherwise, you'd constantly be downloading large sets of files. And we don't want to do that. We want to show you what is applicable within your organization. And then when you're ready to do that download and deployment, you would trigger that as a second action. So it helps reduce the overall amount of traffic that you're going to be consuming with every one of these packages that you see on the screen here. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. And just as you would with any software update, we're leveraging the existing workflow that you're already used to. So we have the ability to download, or I can go ahead and start just deploying, right, directly from here. So I'm going to go ahead and select deploy at this point. It's going to give me the screen that you're really familiar with. I'm going to go ahead and pick the collection that I want to go after. I'm going to go for, the finance deferred guys. And I'm going to start going through the wizard here. Again, this is very familiar to exactly what you're used to. I can pick out my scheduled times, how I want to advertise them, whether it's required or not, does it require system restarts. I haven't changed anything here that you should be, that you're not familiar with. I could pick out my deployment packages and so on, right? And then I could pick out my download locations of where I actually want to be able to download it and go from there. But the critical thing here, and this is what I was showing you earlier, is to, when you identify this screen says which languages do you actually want to download. And in the first dashboard, we put there all the languages that you have within your organization. So we're taking that active inventory, we're showing it to you there so you know exactly which bits you want to download. Because at this point, if those bits are not available to that endpoint, and if I needed 3 languages, that device would not actually update, because we need to make sure that all the languages and the core files are actually up to date to the same version so you don't have any conflicts in that package and a potential crash or some language mismatch in the UI. So that's why we added that UI there. But as we move forward, and I talked about the fallback, we actually have the ability to say, okay, if it's not available in my DP, I can fall back to the CDN, grab those additional bits, and then that machine would be updated with the latest versions across all the language packs and the core sets of files. So I'd go ahead and pick the languages that I want, right? I'd click next, and then would be good to go. And at this point, it would go out, it would look at the package metadata, it would say, okay, what do I need to do to recreate that file structure? And it would download all of that to my local DP and then start pushing it out, depending if I'm targeting it or I'm just advertising it to my organization. And in most cases at this point, you would just be targeting your device collections so they can get updated in the appropriate way. Finally, we know you don't want to be doing this every single time, so there's ADRs that you can create on this, right? And so if I went ahead and said create ADRs, I can certainly do this. Finance, I'm going to put it on semi-annual channel. I'm going to pick out my collection that I want. Again, very similar sets of screens that you're pretty much used to. But the one thing to note over here, as you are pulling this information, the tip here is basically you want to use the title, right? We want to use the title of the actual package, parse that out to be able to create that automatic deployment rule. Now we're working with the WSUS team to come out with more metadata points here so we can actually see things like show me the right channel, show me the right bitness, and so on, so we can make that a little more seamless. But for now, it would be looking at the title itself and really writing out a little query that says, this is the exact set of bits that I want. So if I said, semi-annual channel. And then I can go ahead and preview exactly what I have. I mean, you'll start seeing all the different versions that I have available. So I'd constantly be filtering down to the exact build that I particularly want. Like I said, we are working on making this a lot more seamless, so you could just set it once and then not have to worry about it. Right now, you'd have to go back at every release that we have for every semi-annual channel and start targeting your devices. So that's something to keep in mind if you're building these out today. And those of you who have gone through this experience and kind of noticed that some of the supersedence work didn't work too well, we've also addressed that from our side. So as we are delivering our packages, those are now going to work and work with the automatic update rules. So that's kind of what we have available from an update management, from an ADR perspective, and then being able to actually start delivering bits from System Center Configuration Manager. The good news is, and the nice thing that we've really done here, is we've started integrating with the native flows, so you can take advantage of that versus trying to create your own separate flows if it was just a generic piece of software. So we certainly added all that. Now, there's another thing that I keep getting asked. I'm going to switch here for a second. And what I keep getting asked is, okay, how do I actually start distributing and start taking advantage of the recently announced peer cache? And this is something that we're really excited about, where we have the capability of leveraging peer cache for ProPlus servicing. Now, what this allows you to do, it says, okay, if I have defined my boundaries and I've defined all my different devices, I can go ahead and instead of going to a DP or going out to the CDN, I can leverage an existing a host nearby and be able to grab the set of bits that I really need. And what's really clever about this is if I had one device with a language pack that I needed and another device with another language pack that I needed, I would be talking to both of those devices to get the right set of updates so I can get updated without, again, going out and using my WAN network infrastructure to be able to get those. And as you can kind of see here on the screen, it's really easy to configure, right? We can go ahead into client cache settings, and we can start turning it on. It'd prompt you and inform you that, hey, you need to make sure you have your right firewall port set up. You can even configure the port settings directly in this wizard, and then you would enable and target those to those specific devices that you want to enable peer caching. And then once that's ready, it would go out, look at the individual management point for direction on where to go, which peer I can go ahead and acquire my bits from and start bringing those down and start hydrating my files on my box and then be able to start with that update process. So that we're really excited about. That's available now in 1706 technical preview and should be out shortly in production shortly after that. So let me show you exactly how simple that is to set up. I'm going to switch over here. So at this point, I'm just going into administration under client settings. And you can see I have one that's already set up, but we can go ahead and create another one as well. But we have the client cache setting that's available. I'll turn that back on. I'm going to go into the setting itself. And as you can see, it's just that simple. I would turn it on, and I would target the devices within that boundary group and that site that would define which devices would be able to start sharing the individual set of bits that I would actually need. So that's a very exciting thing for us, and that would be pretty much it from a setting up standpoint. Now, as I'd mentioned to you earlier, there's a lot of work that we're still doing, right? And the fact that System Center Configuration Manager has moved to this much more agile model where we're delivering those server capabilities 3 times a year, we now have the ability to work with them and add these additional features. And as we continue to get feedback from you as our customers, we're adding those capabilities and then be able to have a much quicker and faster turnaround time to make this right. And so thank you for certainly the feedback for those of you who have used this thing. So as you can see, there's been a lot of work. right? We introduced the client management back in 1602. We've done inventory capabilities where we're now getting a lot of information about what is within my organization. Then we've introduced the dashboard. So every single time we've actually been updating. In fact, I've gotten a lot of questions saying, okay, Windows Office, you guys have aligned to twice a year delivery. Why not System Center Configuration Manager? Why is it still 3 times? What happened there? Did you not talk to that team? The reality is we did. And the thing is, for us to be able to keep up with all the changes and delivery methods that Windows 10 and ProPlus are doing together, we need to have one extra delivery for Configuration Manager that allows you to kind of get ahead of those manageability capabilities before the actual product drops and is available to you generally. So that's the reason that we're still maintaining that 3 times a year, while Office and Windows are now being delivered twice a year at that point. But like I said, we're not done yet. There's still a lot of work to get done. We'd love your feedback, so please continue giving that to us so we can move forward and deliver that. But one more thing, right? We've heard a lot of customers that are ready to start moving to modern management. How do I remove distribution points from my organization? How do I have cloud manageability? I want to get, I don't want my servers within the organization. We know all of you aren't there yet, but that's an aspiration you want to get there. So we are working closely with our friends within Microsoft Intune to start providing you with those capabilities. And our first steps were for initial install. And I want to show you kind of what that looks like. And then as we continue to deliver on this, we're going to enhance this. So this is my instance of Microsoft Intune that I have available to me, right? So I can go, and again, we're trying to bring that same familiarity across all the different tools that we have. So as I go into creating an app, let me sign out of this one and sign into the right. Let me go sign into the right version here, or right account. And as I mentioned, so basically what we're doing is we're giving that same familiarity so you can go ahead and start creating those packages, and the devices that are being managed by Intune can now be targeted to install. This is a great scenario for those who are starting to adopt autopilot with Windows 10. So with Windows 10 Autopilot, you could start, provisioning your devices directly from the OEM and having those predefined, and then you can, and once they're enrolled into AAD and Intune, you could start having these packages ready for them and start pushing it out. So again, as I showed you, if I go into apps, I have 2 that are ready here. I'm going to go ahead and create a 3rd one. And what I do is I look at the app type that I have available, which we have a new app type called Office 365 ProPlus. And as you can see here, using the Intune console, I could start doing similar things. I want to start excluding some of the applications that I want. I also have Project and Visio available to me. I can add some additional information about the app. The suite name, I'm going to call this ProPlus Finance, enter the description, and then some basic Intune properties. And then we can go, we'll type that in there. And then from there, we'll go into the app suite settings. And again, you're getting the same set of information of I want 64-bit. I'm going to go and target the semi-annual channel. I want to have I want to accept the terms of agreements already. And do I want shared computer activation or not? And then you would see all the set of languages here again. And that's it, right? I can pick exactly the languages that I want. And now I've created that package automatically. And again, that same process that Configuration Manager has gone, where we've created that XML, except the big difference is we're not downloading and we're not setting those up in your nearest DP. As we're targeting those devices, it would automatically download from the CDN, do the install, and then from there, it would continuously manage its updates from that point onwards from the CDN. Like I said, this is our first step to working with the Intune folks in our company, and we're going to be continuously adding more and more capabilities, advanced capabilities, as you guys start thinking about moving to modern management. That being said, hopefully this gave the last 60 plus minutes have given you some good information about the different capabilities that we have, from first install to update management. Like I said, we're going to be adding more capabilities, and then also you understand kind of where we're going with Microsoft Intune. And there's a number of resources that you can go check out. There's a number of videos that we have, as well as best practices and documentation of the different capabilities. So all of this is available to you for download. And then there's, like I said, plenty of sessions throughout the week. And if you've not had a chance to go to some of these sessions, we certainly are recording a majority of them, so you can go back onto our website and take a look at them. So I'm going to switch to Q&A, but before we do for that, I'm going to ask you, please evaluate the session. It's important to us to understand how well we're doing. Are we giving you the right set of information? But other than that, I'm going to invite John up, and please jump to the mics, and happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you. Question?
I have a question about OneDrive. What is the advantage, if any, to deploying the OneDrives for Business agent on a Windows 10 machine that already has OneDrive client that can connect to OneDrive for Business? Is there an advantage to that, or should you just leave it unchecked?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? What do we do with OneDrive for Business, especially for those targeting Win 10, because OneDrive for Business is integrated. So the OneDrive, the two options that we had there, we had Groove, we had the next generation sync client, and that was particularly done for, one, we refactored our platform on that to make it faster, better, and have more capabilities. The OneDrive team is making sure that we build up all the right capabilities in the next-gen sync client before we start deprecating the Groove client. So that's going to be coming out soon, meaning where we will start deprecating that. But for those of you who are targeting Win 10, if you need the Groove client to support things that we have, that OneDrive team hasn't been able to deliver yet, we could certainly deploy that to Win 10. But if you don't need it and you are fairly modern on that, you would just uncheck both of them and use a native client that Windows 10 has provided you. Yeah. Question in the back?
So one feedback and then a question. So the feedback is, it'd be nice if we could configure SCCM so that it doesn't sync channel updates we don't care about. You look at that list and there's tons, and I know you can filter, but that also adds overhead for the WSUS client when it scans and having those items in WSUS. So I'd love to be able to go into SCCM and my sub properties and say, for Office, I only want this channel. And of course, do that for Windows too. So that's my feedback. The other question is, I think right now we're using the monthly channel, and we'd really love to switch to semi-annual.
Okay.
Because things keep breaking. So is it supported to take something that's currently on a monthly branch and just say, hey, refresh this to the semi-annual? Or would that be like an uninstall, reinstall?
Yeah, happy to answer that. First of all, thank you for the feedback, and we'll certainly look into that and see how we can make that better. So I appreciate that. Switching channels and being able to get the next set of versions is actually a fairly straightforward thing. The way we look at channels is just a delta. It's not an uninstall and reinstall. So if you are on monthly, you would have to then configure that device to change the channel, which we provide you in multiple ways, either through group policy, or you can certainly do it through Configuration Manager. And then what it would do is, with ConfigMan, your applicability checks would change. It would say, instead of this update being applicable, the next update for the different channel would now be applicable to that device. Or you can actually force it to take the update. So it's certainly a delta, but it's not an uninstall, reinstall.
And then one last quick feedback. It would be really great for the SCCM integration if users could go into Software Center and add additional languages for their Office.
Yes.
Because we only do English Windows, but we allow them to do German or French.
Yeah, no, we've heard that feedback, and so that's certainly on our backlog, and we'll do that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Question down here?
What's the best practice for customers like myself who are currently Win 10, but MSI Office 2016 with lots of add-ins? I mean, are you seeing most people do a wipe and load? They have a brand new image with 365 built in with everything installed in order, or how do you get from where I am today to, or best practice to 365? Because
you just brought up a good point. There's one report that we didn't actually talk through, which was the Office 365 client add-ins. We actually have a report that shows you a list of all your add-ins. In addition to that, our team just released this week the application compatibility kit that allows you to kind of scan all your add-ins, all the VBAs that you have within the different files, and start understanding what needs to be changed, what needs to be adapted. So we're starting to do a lot more to give you insights and visibility into how to handle each of those as you're moving forward. So what we've seen, what customers are doing now is they're scanning their environment, they're seeing exactly what they have and which ones they want to start validating and working with the individual business owners or app owners, if you will, to make sure that they have gone through their due diligence or not. In addition to that, we've also started adding all the add-in information into Ready for Windows. So if you go into Ready for Windows, you can start seeing some of that information directly from there, and then being able to understand how highly adopted or not you have for that particular add-in. So here's actually the Ready for Windows site. If I went and said, okay, I need a PDF viewer, I'm just going to do a generic PDF search here. But I can see now that there is a supported for Office 365 Pro Plus capability here. Not only does it tell me the version and all, I can even pick the bitness. So as I'm thinking about transitioning from 32 to 64, I can see that kind of information there. So we're doing a lot of work where we are populating that with Ready for Windows and providing you more of that added information. And we have several sessions focused purely on this. So I would definitely encourage you to check that out.
Hello.
Yeah.
Oh, where?
We got some in the back as well.
In the back. Okay, sorry.
Yes. Will you be incorporating device-based activation in the Office 365 deployment packaging in SCCM?
Sorry, incorporating what?
Device-based activation.
Device-based activation.
Right.
So device-based activation we do have for Project and Visio. And so those are currently available. So if you have and device-based, I'm talking about more of the perpetual license. If I have KMS or your traditional Mac, you can certainly do that, and we do that, support that today. Now, if you're talking about Pro Plus, right now we don't have anything to announce around that. So we're constantly looking into better ways of working through our products, but nothing I can. We don't have anything right now in the
Right.
product.
Because that's pretty much what we're doing now. Yeah, it uses that OPP transition utility and so it's a configuration. I guess maybe it's only for education customers. I'm not sure.
For what, sorry?
It's for education customers. I think that the device-based activation for Office Pro Plus is only for education customers at this point.
I'm not really sure. Maybe if we can chat shortly after. I got some folks over here who can probably help answer that one, because I'm not familiar with the education sector or what licensing we have there. But if you want to meet after, we can certainly chat about that.
All right, thanks.
Yes. My question is for the Office 365 initial package. If I have created and force run to all of my general population, and then later on, we allow, like the people, like the gentleman asked, that we have additional language,
Yes.
like a different language. So can we make a separate package and available in Software Center?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, and that would be the best practice today. Is you can create language. The challenge that you're going to face there is you would have to update those language every time a new version or build is out, and makes it a little challenging. So that's why we're trying to work through the capability where you can define those languages in the Software Center, and then we can automatically update for those to the latest version that you have downloaded.
Like for example, is that later on somebody have 10 people installed manually or Software Center that language. So next version when I create it, will that not automatically pick up this 10 people have the additional language? And
you would get that in your report.
Oh.
It wouldn't automatically download it, but you will certainly get that in your report. So if 1 month you had 12 languages, you would go back to your report. Next month you'd see 13, 14 languages, depending on how you've set it up. So that's the challenge that we know that is currently in the product, and that we're working through that to make that a lot easier.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Go to the back, right back there.
Yep. Sir?
Are you guys going to have a little bit better logging capabilities when it comes to the updates? because with all other updates you deploy with System Center, it's a little bit easier to find and troubleshoot and look at. But when it comes to Office 365 through Config Manager, the log files are everywhere, and they're 10, 15, 20 different log files for one update.
Fair enough. No, I appreciate the feedback on that. We'll certainly look into that and see how we can improve. Like I mentioned, we're continuously improving the solution, so appreciate the feedback on that, and we'll certainly get.
Thank you.
If we just want to use the new wizard to do all of our Office packages, but we want to use it in MDT in our base image, can we just take the output from SCCM, the source files, and the command lines, and just port those over and run those so we don't have to ever look at XML files again?
Sorry, I'm trying to see if I'm following that. So using the MDT?
No, so using the new wizard, if we create the package for Office, and then we want to just take that out of SCCM and use it in MDT when we're doing our reference image, can we just take the source files that are generated from that and the command lines and just take them out?
Right, yeah, you can certainly do that. I don't recall where we exactly put the XML file, but you're certainly going to need the XML file in addition to the source files to be able to make that happen if you are customizing the way that package looks.
Yeah, just
but it's the same source files that you would use regardless.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
I had a comment very similar to gentleman that talked about logging. We integrate with click-to-run tool to start the actual update of Office 365, and it's very problematic for us at the moment to receive the feedback from click-to-run, why it failed to do the actual update. So to do that, you need to go to these logs and do a lot of parsing and conversion there. So we are looking for a way to get an easier feedback from click-to-run about what went wrong. So very typical problem for us is that click-to-run tool is unable to find the required ranges of information in this large image. And this very usually happens for customers because when they download these large images from Microsoft website, there is something wrong going there. And Microsoft website says that file is already downloaded, but actually only part of the image was downloaded. And then it's very problematic to understand that because click-to-run doesn't provide good information why it failed, and actually it didn't find the range.
Fair enough. So we certainly take that feedback, and like I said, we'll look at our logging structure, see how we can make that a little better, so we can give you guys the right set of error codes, so it's easy for you to parse that out. But I apologize, we have run out of time, and I think the next session's coming in. But we will be down here hanging out for a bit, so if you have any questions, please come on up. Thank you again.